The Entrepreneur Journey Podcast, episode 31.
Hey guys, I just had a pleasure of meeting Antoine Martel of Martel Turnkey. He has a remarkable story coming to real estate right out of college, done over 100 properties a year, and he has a great story I want to just share. We've just been chatting a little bit about our backgrounds when it comes to real estate and where we're from. And so with no further ado, I just want to introduce Antoine and just kind of tell a little bit about your background and just share with my audience how you got started, and we'll take it from there.
Sure. Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for having me on, and pleasure to be here. So I started investing 4 years ago. I was still at university, but kind of my last year at university. It was, I studied entrepreneurship at Loyola Marymount University here in LA. And it was either, okay, I can get a job just like everybody else, all my classmates, or I can start my own company, which is what I really wanted to do. And I didn't know it was going to be real estate related. I thought I would make an app and then retire 3 years later, but didn't happen that way. I ended up learning as much as I could about real estate while I was at college. I learned as much as I could. I figured out that flipping houses in California was way too expensive, way too difficult to put all your eggs in one basket. And I didn't have, $1 million or 500 grand in my bank account to do so. So I started looking at rental properties, looking at investing out of state, doing stuff out of state, seeing all the success that people were having out of state. Then my last semester at university, I bought a rental property out of state in Memphis, Tennessee, bought the house with my dad's $40,000. Renovated it, rented it out, put a property management company in place, and then did a cash out refinance, gave my dad his money back, and then just kept growing like that. So I would raise money for projects and just kept doing that right out of college. And the goal was kind of just to help my parents, grow a rental property portfolio so that they could eventually live off of that. My dad has his own business, so he doesn't have any 401k or anything like that. So it was really just creating a retirement plan for my parents. 1 year after graduating, I decided to start helping other families because we started selling our properties before we would refinance them to friends and family and stuff like that. So I started selling properties to just friends and family, and selling them turnkey. So we would just do everything except for refinancing and just sell them properties that were fully renovated with tenants in place, give them the property management company, and call it a day, and help other families invest just like my parents were doing out of state. And that's kind of grown to what we are today. And now we do, 8 to 10 houses a month or 100 homes a year, help other families invest in rental properties all across the US and a couple of different markets. And yeah, that's where we are today.
So wait a minute, I just have to back up. You just said you graduated in 2017, right?
Yep.
And you went out and started your own company, and you're doing 10 properties a month. That's amazing.
Thank you.
So like you said, you studied entrepreneurship in college.
Yeah.
I think right there, that had to accelerate your growth because, having been out of college and, everybody was, back in the day was like, oh, go to school to be an engineer, a doctor, lawyer, teacher. But I really felt like there was never enough emphasis on financial management, investing, and entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. So how did you even think about that at your college? How did that come about?
Yes, there's not many colleges that offer entrepreneurship as a major, because this wasn't just like an elective class. This was like a full course load, right? So we did everything from the accounting side and learning about statistics and all that stuff. But then we, the entrepreneurship side was more about okay, if you're going to start a company, how do you raise money for that company or that product? How do you build a team? So it's more like going from 0 to 1. And that's pretty much what the whole entire course and those courses were about. So they would also bring in really cool speakers, people who started companies. So you were kind of learning a ton about how people went from 0 to 1 and how they grew and scaled their businesses. And then the school would also put on events they would have startup weekend, and they would have all these events and stuff like that for the students to actually put their skills to the test. And some classes were even the first week of classes, okay, you guys are going to get into teams and you're going to, in 3 months at the end of the semester, you guys are going to pitch to a bunch of investors and try to raise money. So, coming up with the idea for the product, coming up with your core values, your core competencies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, it was really cool in that sense. The reason why I chose it is just business management just wasn't I had like looked at some of the courses for business management, and then compared those with entrepreneurship. And I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. Like ever since I was a little kid, I've been selling everything that you can think of, from soda to candy bars to skateboards to hats,
Wow.
shoes, everything. So it was kind of like in my blood. And I was like, I don't want to just be a business management major and take these, management classes. I want to do something and, be in control of something. So that's kind of how I came across the entrepreneurship major. And yeah, there's not many schools that offer it.
Gotcha. So there was you always had that knack for just going out and making things happen.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
explains a little bit more, because it's like, man, that's a lot of people, later in life, they finally get the bug and it's like, okay, we're gonna make this drastic change. So that's amazing.
Yeah.
So graduating college, was there any pressure on going out and getting a real job, as they say, or you just knew that you were going to go out into business?
Yeah. There was no pressure for me. I think the pressure would have, if it were to come, it would have came from my parents, right? But my parents were, through my whole life, that my mom's an entrepreneur. So she started when I was a little kid. She had like a bunch of different companies that I would help her out with. Even though I was a little kid, I would like run the cash register. She had like a retail store. She had like a sauce company, a gourmet food company, a catering company. So like when I was a little kid, I would start my own little businesses and then help mom, do her businesses while my dad was at work, right? And then for my little companies that I would start off as a little kid, my dad would always, invest in those companies, quote unquote. And it would just be like a bunch of practice sessions to get to the real thing. So he would always, they always pushed me to start my own company. Even I remember when I was in high school or community college, my dad was like, I want you to go and get an internship, and I want you to see how it is to actually work for somebody else in a big company. Because at that point, I think in high school, I hadn't had worked for anybody. I hadn't had a job because I was too young. But then as soon as I hit 18, he was like, you need to go and work for a company. So go get an internship at some big company and see. He was like, just see how it is. And it may pressure you into, you don't want to do this, because my dad's been working, for somebody else his whole life. I think he wanted to show me what it was like to actually work for somebody else instead of working for yourself. So I got an internship while I was at high school, and I think I did it for like 2 summers. And then after it, I was like, wow, these people are so slow. They hardly reply to emails. I can't get anything done. All my ideas get pushed on the rug. So I think it was through that, like my dad backing me up on the entrepreneurship side, and then also like showing me, like giving me a little reality check of what it's going to be like if I don't go and do the entrepreneurship and start my own company. That's what really pressured me into doing what I'm doing and becoming an entrepreneur and starting something myself.
That's a good point. I mean, I remember reading the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, and that was that was a game changer for me.
Yeah,
going through college, I was the traditional route, but reading that book, it kind of planted that seed. And Robert Kiyosaki, one of the things I always tell everybody and always share, he always says, go to work to learn. A lot of times we're conditioned to say, okay, go to college and get a good job and, make a bunch of money, whatever.
Yeah.
But the book was saying, go to work to learn. And I always took that to heart, because now it's not about just going to make an income, but it's going to learn the business, learn the culture. And like you said, the things that you didn't like, the slow pace, you can now apply that to your own business because you had opportunity to work for other companies. And, you've been in business for almost 2 years.
Yeah.
Whereas some of these other companies could have been around for, like GE, for example, is like a 125-year-old company.
Yeah.
So there's no way I could get all that culture and experience in a short amount of time without having to work for somebody else. So
yeah,
that's good advice.
I agree. Yeah, and that book's amazing. I mean, Rich Dad Poor Dad, that's like the first book I recommend to people who are like, why do you invest in real estate, and why don't you want to buy a house, and blah, blah, blah. And that's the first book. I'm like, go read this book and then we'll talk. And yeah, it's a huge mind shift because it lays it out super simply how he grew his wealth and how he's helping other people grow wealth too.
That's awesome, man. So let's just fast forward. So you're in college, you start your business. How'd you go about, setting your business up when you got it started? Did you just, like you said, you did your first property. Once you got rolling, did you start setting up structure? Did you bring on partners? How did you start scaling from that first property?
So in order to do that first property, I had to build a team on the ground, right? Because I'm in California. I was doing stuff in, Memphis, Tennessee. So I went out there, found a contractor, property management company, realtor, inspector, appraiser, all that kind of stuff. So that was like my team that I had built. And they were all, commission based, right? So they weren't on my payroll or anything. So just the more projects we did, the more money that they made. So everybody was kind of incentivized to do more deals and help Antoine do more deals. That's just kind of how I set it up. So we did that first project and I was like, all right, let's just see if this is successful. If we can pull our money out, then we'll do another one. So we did. It was successful, got our money back. And I was like, okay, now let's do two. Those two projects went successful, got our money back. Okay, now, so we just kept slowly growing it. The only thing, so the team on the ground was already in a scalable position. The contractor could add on more people onto his crew, and that's what he has done. Now he's working on 7 houses at a time when he was only doing one house of ours at a time. He's full time with us now, and so is his whole crew. So that scaled. The realtors we were working with added on assistants, so they kind of like scaled themselves. I didn't really need to micromanage them or help them scale. It was like, hey, there's more volume coming, so you guys better be ready, But me personally, I only needed to scale the money raising side because I went from $40,000 to being able to manage, only fund one project, and then I was doing 10 projects. So it was, again, a natural progression of just networking in LA on bigger pockets, networking events, sharing with people what I was doing, what I was trying to do, and really raising money that way. So I started just raising money from people in LA to help fund those projects. And that's what I needed to really scale up to a point of doing 10 houses a month. Was just really, I needed the cash in order to do that. But every other thing was already in a scalable position to be able to handle that volume.
Gotcha. So I don't want to get into all your, let me know if it's any proprietary information, but when you start working with your clients, like what kind of business models? Is it flips? Are you doing turnkey properties for, like if an investor wants to, buy investment property or rental?
Yeah. And you can ask me whatever you want. I'm open book. So the way that my business structure kind of works is I'll buy a property, rehab it, rent it out, put a property management company in place, and then I'll put it up on my website. If it doesn't sell after 6 months of me owning it, then I'll just do a cash out refinance and hold that property myself long term. So that's kind of my business model. Now, introducing the funding side to it, what I used to do when I first started, my first 20 or 30 projects, investors would come in, they would invest 80% of the total project cost. I would put some skin in the game. And then the plan for the project would be to buy, rehab, rent, and then resell on my website. And then we would split the profits 50-50. So they were like joint venture partners with us. So those people would, invest 80% of the project cost. They would get 50% of the profits, and then they would just keep rolling their money into more and more projects. So that's how I was able to really scale up. And then, once somebody makes like a 20% return off you on a flip, quote unquote, to a turnkey investor, then that person's going to keep coming back. They tended to double down their money and stuff like that. So it was really just finding like 5 to 10 investors who, would take the first chance at me. And then kind of just those people, they were like walking billboards at that point, because they would go and share and say, oh, you should really invest with Antoine, and he pays really good returns, blah, 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 blah. And that's kind of how I was able to scale it without too much. It was still a lot of effort on the networking side, but it kind of grew itself just by treating people right and paying them a good return and doing what you say you're going to do, kind of helped scale up the raising money side as well.
You think about like a CD and stuff, banks and stuff now, but they're paying like ridiculously low returns, 1 to 2% over. You got to keep your money in there for 5 or 10 years or whatever the number is nowadays. But it's really hard to compete with that if you're giving 20% returns.
Yeah,
it's kind of a no-brainer.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, and I realized too at that time, like when I was only doing my first 10 or 20 homes, like I still didn't have much reputation. I didn't have a rapport with people. Like I was just some young kid who had just graduated college, so it needed to be like there needed to be a risk reward factor for people to actually invest their money. So that's why I was willing to give away, half of the deal to these investors because, nobody would trust me with just giving me a private money loan at, 10 or 12% at that point because it was just too low of a return. But once they saw 20%, then people's ears really perked up and they, just did their due diligence then and began to trust me. So yeah, it's hard to raise money for those first couple projects, and you may need to give away more than you want to, but then once you do 30 or 40 projects, then you stop using those joint venture partners, which is what I don't use joint ventures anymore. I just kind of raise money, like private money lending. So people lend me money at 10 or 12%. And then instead of getting a percentage of the profit, they just make a interest payment every single month.
Okay, nice. I just want to back up just a little bit, being that I have a company called PCS Albany LLC, and we basically do contracting work.
Yeah.
We were talking earlier before we, started this session, and there are some growing pains when it comes to starting a business, getting your name out there. Me personally, just finding quality workers and laborers to make sure that the quality is to the expectation you need it to be. What are some of the challenges that you faced early on with, some of your vendors, or just some of the things that stick out in your mind that you struggled through, but now you're like, man, it wasn't so bad, but it was a nightmare when I was going through it. What are some of those moments?
Yeah, so I'm going through one of those right now. I bought an apartment building in December, and there was supposed to be some guy was supposed to be doing work on that project, and building a new staircase, and there was weather. Then there was weather issues because there's been storms the last couple of months in Memphis, Tennessee, so it really delayed all that work that was supposed to get done. Then we go and check the quality of the work at the end. Like you said, if stuff doesn't line up, like the handrails are too short for code, the steps are not are supposed to be 6 inches or 7 inches apart, but they're only 3 or 4 inches. So so I'm gonna go out there and have him re-weld the whole thing, I guess. But yeah, I mean, finding quality workers is hard. The reason why is because the guys who are doing quality work, like my contractors that I use for just the single family home side, I keep reusing the same guys over and over and over and over again, and they're busy as hell. They can't even take on other people's projects because they're working with us full time now, like I said. So yeah, finding those good contractors is really difficult because the good ones are busy, right? So finding contractors to do work on your projects, if they have all this free time and they're going to go walk out to your projects for free and, do all this kind of stuff without having a relationship with you, it becomes really difficult because they may not be doing quality work, like you said. The way that I found my contractors, the ones that I have now for the single family home side, is mostly through referrals. So referrals have been the best way that I've found, just because you can kind of sneak yourself into the door, even though that contractor may be really busy. So, if the contractor has so many projects going on, but you're referred by somebody who, is their top client, for example, or a broker or realtor that they really like and trust, then you may be able to get in the back door where that person may not have an online presence because they're so damn busy. The work just comes to them, right? They don't need to be on social media or marketing or, replying to people's posts on, some job board website. They're busy as hell. They get phone calls left and right. So that's kind of how, for me, it was like all my contractors to this day still come from referrals.
Gotcha. And what about the business side of it? How do you set your structure up? And were there any things there, like lessons learned, things you didn't know that you didn't know?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's about finding that team on the ground who is all going to be incentivized for you to do more deals. For me too, I would go and visit the markets. I would meet with I would meet with 5 property management companies, 5 or 10 of the best realtors in that city or whatever. And then I would, kind of see who I also vibed with the most or had the most the best of a relationship with, who I can sit down and talk to for, 2 or 3 hours, and time would be flying by. So you're going to be working with these people day in and day out. So you want somebody who you can talk to, who, has the same mindset as you, same values, et cetera, right? I was a 22-year-old kid going out to all these markets. So I was trying to find somebody who was young and hungry and looking to grow, and because those are all things that I wanted to do. So if you go and look at my teams, that's the teams that I built. Most of them are under 30 years old. they're trying to grow, they're trying to expand their business, whether that be the property management side or the realtors or the contractors. All of them are kind of looking to grow. So I would say, it's about quality of work and stuff like that too, and putting in the work. But it's also like finding somebody that you can have the best relationship with, who you wouldn't mind, doing business with and talking to, every single day. So it has to be somebody you have a good relationship with, and you guys are kind of on the same level and have the same vision, I would say.
Gotcha. So the no like trust factor.
Yeah.
And so what about like did you incorporate? Did you do anything with the LLC? Did you
Got it.
some of that structure?
Yeah, so that business structure, the legal structure, so what I did is I made like an umbrella LLC, so Martel Turnkey LLC. Then underneath that LLC, I have like MTK1, MTK2, MTK3, MTK4, and all of those projects. So every single house that we do a renovation on is in one of those sub LLCs. So I started off just with the banner, and then I did MTK1, and then once I had too many projects under one LLC, I would make a new LLC and then buy houses under that LLC. So that's kind of how my business structure is today. It's just like reducing the amount of liability that you have, and so that if something bad happens on one project, you can't be sued for your entire portfolio, right? So we have like 35 projects going on at one time. If those are all under one LLC and somebody sues us for whatever reason, whether it be a contractor or a tenant or somebody walking by, then I don't want them to take my whole portfolio, but at least I can just split up the risk and kind of diversify it a bunch across like 35 LLCs instead of just 2 or 3.
Gotcha. Now, is there a rule of thumb? You just mentioned like you don't want to have too many under one umbrella. Do you have a cutoff point, or is it based on the value?
I don't really. I would just say at any given time I have like 1 to 3 projects per LLC, and I just have like a Excel spreadsheet or a CRM that kind of tracks like, which projects are owned by which LLC. So I just kind of try to split it. I mean, I think I have like 11 or 12 LLCs in those sub LLCs. So I just kind of try to split it up as best as I can. And then of course, if I buy like, when I bought my apartment building, like I created a brand new LLC just for that apartment building, right? Because the lender wanted that and all that kind of stuff. So if you're doing like huge projects, I would just create a new LLC. I use a website called Incorp, incorp.com. They're super cheap. They're the cheapest I've found, cheaper than LegalZoom and all that kind of stuff too, to make those LLCs. So you can, and they're actually pretty fast as well. So even if you're closing in a couple of days, you can make a brand new LLC and close it in that.
Nice. Yeah, I know when I was, I remember when I was leaving corporate America, it was like I had to hit the ground running fast as possible. Yeah. So I went the LegalZoom route. I mean, I knew I could have did it all myself. I just needed something quick. I just remember making a video on it on YouTube, and everybody's like, I thought they were a scam and blah, 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 blah. I said, well, I haven't had any issues with them. It does help to get an email every quarter when it's time to do sales tax and all these different things. But as you do it more and more, like you said, I'll make sure I put a link for that service you referred.
Yeah. I mean, LegalZoom's good. We used to use it. It's just then we found this one and we're like, wow, why is it a third of the price? So, gotcha. Yeah.
And I'm big on productivity hacks and software. So you said you use a CRM, use Excel.
Yep.
What type of CRM are you using?
Sure. We just upgraded this year to Zoho CRM. It's like $30 per user per month. Mm-hmm. So it's not that expensive. But I mean, it's amazing. So last year, I think I did 60 projects, and I did all that with like a free CRM called VTigger. It's like a free open source CRM. It's terrible. And then I upgraded to this one this year, and like 70 or 80% of the emails I used to send manually are all automated. Tasks are automatically created. I can see like where each project is in its life cycle. So it also like incorporate when people fill out forms on my website, it automatically creates leads on the CRM. So it's unbelievable how much of a difference. And like paying for a good CRM, especially when you're trying to scale up your company. I wish I did this last year. But some people are like, oh, I'll just do it for free and I don't want to pay $100 a month. But trust me, this CRM is incredible. I'm not sure. Do you have a CRM that you use as well?
I've been testing Bitrix24.
Okay.
I've been testing that for some of the digital marketing.
Got it.
So I've been trying that out.
Okay.
As far as this, my business, I just use for my management side of it, and the financing is just I use QuickBooks because we're
Yep.
on the contractor side, so creating quotes, invoicing, estimating
Yeah, we use that one
taxes
too.
and stuff like that. I actually had today to make sure I hit my March 15th deadline. So yeah, starting out it's just trying to be a one-man band wearing all these hats, but eventually, we'll scale up. And I do
Yeah.
have my accountant and stuff logging into our system to look at my books and stuff like that. So eventually
yeah.
I want to scale and focus on business development, not have to be so far entrenched in the day-to-day.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a necessity, to make sure you can understand your business, know where the problems are, the challenges, where you can improve. So I can't be totally disconnected, but definitely want to free myself up to be able to scale. So where are you headed now? We were talking earlier, you were asking me about Buffalo and other parts. So you're not just doing properties in LA. I heard you say Memphis, and so kind of where do you expect to see yourself in the next couple of years? Like, what are you trying to be, like, nationwide, or how do you go about scaling?
Yeah, so right now I do the turnkey stuff in Memphis, Cleveland, St. Louis, and Birmingham, Alabama. Mostly Memphis and Cleveland. The other two markets, Birmingham and St. Louis, I'm just kind of starting out. So it's just really hard to find markets that work for my business model, which is like, turnkey rental properties that are cash flowing at, 15% return. It's hard to find, and there's not many markets where it can work that, where those cities are stable and have, have good economics. So it's really hard to find cities. So that's why, like, going nationwide, I just don't see it happening, just because there's not enough markets in the US where my business model could work. So my goal is to eventually move into like apartment buildings and apartment building syndication. So, keep the turnkey business going and keep that growing, but then also move into doing more apartment buildings and, helping people invest with us on those apartment buildings. So last year I bought my first apartment building, which was 20 units, but I'd like to, get into bigger and better things. So doing 50 units or 100 units. So that's what I see. I see myself growing the turnkey business from 100 homes a year to like 300 homes a year, and then apartment buildings going from 20 units to maybe 100 or 200 unit buildings.
See, now that's stuff I need to hear too, because I've done the single family, but that's kind of my next step, is getting into multi units. And so before I forget that thought, you mentioned Memphis, and I'm gonna come back to the apartment building. Have you heard of Memphis Invest?
Yeah.
So I have a partner that we did some real estate together, and he's out in Texas.
Okay.
And so I never heard of Memphis Invest, and he was telling me so when I heard what you were talking about, I was like, oh, it's kind of similar. Similar concept.
Very similar.
And they do a lot of projects. I forgot how many they say they do a year, 500 or whatever, but they have a lot of projects queued up. So I was like, it's pretty similar. I think they're doing Memphis, and I think they have another one called Dallas Invest, I think.
Yeah, they do Memphis and Dallas, and then I think they're getting into St. Louis as well.
Mm-hmm. And that's what's cool about it. And, they have a lot of content. Like I'm quite sure you have your email list and stuff set up. And so you're sending out content to your, potential clients and stuff. So I've been looking at some of their stuff just to, just understand the content and get some value from that. So.
Yeah, they're great. They do. So they have the exact same business model as me. They're just much larger. They also have their property management companies in house. But yeah, they're good. They're just a little bit higher of a price point. My homes are like less than $100,000. They do like, 125 ish range. So they're just a little bit more, not expensive, but just, it's more dollars that you have to put down. The neighborhoods are a little bit different. They focus a lot on B class neighborhoods. I'm more of like C, B minus.
That's awesome. I mean, so when I talk to other, people trying to get in business, and even when I was thinking about business ideas, a lot of times your reservations and fears, it's like, well, other people have already done it. How can I find my spot in that market? And I always tell people, go for it anyway, because everybody can eat. That's what I would like to say.
Yep.
So don't ever fear competition, or if other people are already doing it, then it's a proven model. And so, did you hear about them before you got going, or was there anything you learned from them?
Yeah, I knew them. Yeah, they've been in the business for years, right? So,
Gotcha.
I think their father, it was two brothers, and then their father started the company, and then the two brothers kind of helped grow it. I mean, this is just, I don't know the facts, but this is kind of the story I know. You're always going to have competition. If you don't have competition, then something's wrong. So there's always going to be competition, but I wouldn't really, again, like I told you, like my product is, I have the same business model as these people. I'm in the same market, and I'm still able to do 10 houses a month. They do 20 houses a month or 17 or something like that last time I heard. So, like we're both in the same markets, same business model, but our product is just a tiny bit different. And just with that small little change of having a tiny different product, different price point, different client we're trying to attract, then, it's still both of us can function in the same exact market. So yeah, you should know all your competitors and all the different product offerings, because it's going to help you craft your product offering in a little bit in a pocket of that market that, isn't being touched. So I think it helps to do as much research as you can on all of your competitors to know where you can fit it into the product market. And yeah, I think that's kind of how I did it too, because I went and researched all the other turnkey providers in Memphis, saw what they were doing, where they were doing it, and how much volume they were doing, their price points, etc. And then said, oh, well, nobody's doing it over here, and nobody's doing it in this price point. And then I kind of took that model into a bunch of different markets and just do your homework and due diligence to make sure that you're providing something that nobody else is providing.
Well said. So I want to fast forward back to the question about, we were talking about apartment buildings. So how'd you even, 20 units, like how did you even approach that deal? Like how'd you even find it? Matter of fact, I mean, you don't see that on the market every day. I know I go on LoopNet and certain sites like that, but how did you even go about even finding that deal and putting that deal together?
Yeah, so it was a long time coming. So all of last year, pretty much from like March all the way up to like August or something like that, I was like networking with I knew I wanted to buy an apartment building. I'd only done like single families or residential side. So single families up to 4 units at that point. And I was like, no, but I want to do something bigger. I want to buy an apartment building and just, live off the cash flow kind of thing. So I started networking with a bunch of brokers in my markets. So Memphis and Cleveland, mostly, I would just like pull a whole list of brokers, commercial brokers, and I would just call them, email them, tell them what I was looking for. And I would just keep following up every other week. So I did that for like 6 months, let's say. And I just kept following up with them. Hey, this is Antoine. I'm looking for an apartment building. This is my criteria, every other week with these people. And then it just so happened that one of the days that I was following up with one of the brokers, gave him my criteria. He was like, oh yeah, I actually got a deal that fits that perfectly this morning. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Send it over. He was like, okay, cool. I'll send it. I think he sent it to me first or second or something like that. And it was just like 3 or 4 photos of an exterior, no interior photos. And then it was like the financials typed out in an email. And I was like, can I get the financials? Can I move forward with this one? I really like the area. I like the numbers. He's like, no financials until you place an LOI. And I went and did my homework on the operating expenses and what the rent, I think I got a rent roll and like just some basic information, not enough to really put an offer together. But I was like, okay, well, they're like, we're looking for 1.1 million. And I was like, okay, I'll offer 900. And we submitted an LOI. They came back at $1 million, and we're like, okay, we agreed to it. And just in the contract, we made it so that due diligence didn't begin until we had all the financial information. So it took them like 30 days to get us all that information. And during that time, I was like, going ham, doing as much research as they could about the market, the neighborhood, the property, walking the property, taking photos, figuring out what needed to be done. So it bought me a whole month doing it that way, because the buyers weren't really prepared. They were just like, oh, I wonder what we can get on the market, but they didn't want to, dig up all the financials, right? So that's kind of how I found the deal and and then once I got all the financial information, then due diligence began. And then I kind of had 30 or 60 days to complete my due diligence. And then, so that's kind of how I found the deal. It was just really through following up with those brokers. And then once a deal comes up, that's good. I mean, you can't be scared to make an LOI. or make an offer. It's called a letter of intent, LOI. It's just pretty much the first stage of writing a purchase and sale agreement just to get you and the buyer on board about price and terms and different things like that.
So you're saying, they wanted $1 million. So did you already have your financing ready, or you just said, I'm going to lock the deal and go for it? Because that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes.
I know.
It shows people down when they think of real estate. I got to have all this money for a down payment, whatever it may be. What propelled you to even, think past that? I know you had experience under your belt now, so how did you get past that dollar figure?
Yeah, so I didn't have financing lined up. I knew that financing was going to be a struggle because I don't have W-2 income, and that purchase price size, like the Freddie Mac program won't finance that because it's too low. So I knew it was going to be a struggle to get financing at that price point. We had some money saved up because like the markets for the single family home side were like moving kind of slowly at that point. So we had some money saved up. So I knew I could afford the down payment, whatever it may be, like 30% down or something. So I knew I was good there. I didn't know who was going to finance the deal. I kind of just in my numbers just, put like a really expensive loan at like 6 or 7% and just said, okay, well, I hope we can find a lender for this amount of money. And then as soon as I had like the property under contract, then I went and just, called every single lender who I thought could help me finance the deal. Then we eventually found a lender who helped us finance it. And they were like an asset-based lender. So they didn't really care about our financial history or tax returns. It was just all about the property. So that's kind of how, but I did it all. I mean, you're going to eventually have to take the risk. I mean, you can't if you wait to have everything lined up before placing that offer, you're never going to get anything. These deals move in the good ones move in a couple of hours because people just put them under contract, tie it up, and then they figure out everything else. And I guess I'd kind of learned that through the residential side. Like when properties come up on the MLS, I just make a blind offer, get it under contract, then do your homework. And you want to make an offer that, makes sense, that you think is going to make sense. So like budget for renovation, budget for high interest rate, all that kind of stuff. But getting stuff under contract and then working the deal and making the deal work once you have it under contract is kind of was my methodology with the single family home side. And then I guess I just, when I did the apartment building, I thought I can do the same thing. And yeah, it worked.
What's the analysis paralysis they always say? So that's the biggest thing. As an engineer background, a lot of people's like, oh, you guys can't get out of your own way because you're trying to analyze. I think the best thing that helped me was going into management and this entrepreneurship world. It really helps me break outside of the box of just trying to have everything perfect. But yeah, just taking that action and taking that leap of faith, and then you have the background to pull it all together. So. Yeah, that's a remarkable story.
Thank you. Yeah, and you have to look at okay, what's the worst case scenario? If I don't get this, if I place this offer and get the deal under contract, then I can't move forward for whatever reason. What do I lose? So if I can't get financing, I can get when you put it under contract, you have to put some earnest money. So I think we put like $5,000 or something. So the worst case scenario going through that whole process is I lose my $5,000, but I'm going to learn a whole lot for the next deal, right? So that's kind of how I looked at it. I may waste a lot of time or spend a lot of time going through this, but it's going to help me on the next deal. Even if this doesn't go through, I'll lose my $5,000, but I'll just count it as an educational expense. So that's kind of how I was looking at it at that point. And, and then I'll know better for the next time. And that's the only way to grow, right? So there's only so many books you can read and courses you can go through that are going to make you feel comfortable. Eventually, you're just going to have to do it. And every deal is different. So you're going to have to take the jump and take the risk and always look at, okay, what's the worst case scenario? I lose my $5,000 deposit and I have to walk away and I make some people upset, but I'll learn better for the next one. And, it's going to help you grow. And next time you get another building, you're going to know more. You're going to be able to take down more buildings because now you have that experience.
So basically you're saying you put in contingencies in your contract so you always have a way out.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and give yourself enough time too in the contract. Like if you're buying your first apartment building, don't say you're going to have 5-day due diligence, 5 days to close after. Give yourself time. So I think I asked for 45 days of due diligence, 45 days to close after, and they countered back with 30 and 30. So, do whatever makes you feel comfortable within reason. write up the offer that's going to make most sense for you. And then if they counter, then just work on it with you and that seller. But yeah, make yourself feel comfortable. Give yourself enough time to do all your homework, especially on those first big deals or even smaller deals. I mean, if you're buying single family homes, ask for 2 weeks of due diligence and 2 weeks to close after that. So you have a full month to do your homework on that property. And worst case scenario, you lose your deposit.
Understood. Yeah, I got a funny story too. When we moved to New York, in Virginia, when we bought properties, we were used to a 30-day close.
Yeah.
Coming to New York, there's a 2-attorney system, so it's a lot longer closing process. And I remember we relocated here. Basically, the company moved all our furniture and everything, and we were staying into like a extended stay. So we're like, okay, yeah, we're gonna be in our house in 3 or 4 weeks, and it ended up turning into 6 or 7 weeks.
Oh,
We had to wait for the whole closing process, and so it was definitely, like you said, add more time, give yourself enough time, and if you're planning things out, because if you're going to look at different states, everybody does things slightly different. So
yeah, exactly.
Man, I really enjoyed this episode. It's a lot of great content here. Just to value your time here, because we're approaching almost 45 minutes now. We've just been talking and going. Is there anything you want to share with my audience, more about you, more about your company, any words of inspiration? I really appreciate your time, and thanks for reaching out to me on social media, our social media. I like what you're doing with your marketing and stuff. So
thank you.
So I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you. So
yeah, thanks for having me on. I would just say, like, for there's a lot of young people out there who, say their age is, going to stop them from success. Or you said looking at the competition is going to stop them from, having a successful business. I was like 20 years old raising money, a couple $1 million to fund all these projects out of state. And like, it can be done. It doesn't matter how old you are or what you look like or anything like that. It's just about your knowledge and you doing good to other people. So just use that as your focus. Don't count yourself out of the game when you haven't even started yet. Just go out there, take action, do your homework and do your due diligence, but do it up to a point. So don't do it up to a point where you're never going to do a deal. Don't be so conservative that you're never going to do anything. You're going to learn the most from doing deals instead of running numbers and reading books and listening to podcasts. So learn as much as you can, look at your resources, and then take action. And that's where you're really going to learn and grow.
Awesome. Well said. Last thing, where can people find you?
Yeah, sounds good. So you can go to my website, martelturnkey.com. That's my main business. You can reach out to me on Instagram. I post a lot of good content. It's not like there's no sales in it. It's just more like educational stuff. So like I would recommend it if you're looking at getting into real estate or real estate investing. My Instagram is Martel Antoine, MartelAntoine. I also have a podcast as well. It's a Millennial's Guide to Real Estate Investing. So you can check that out. Feel free to DM me, ask me any questions. We'd love to help any of you listeners out there.